Hey, boys and girls, Rational Empiricist Rants version 5, 4 or 5, something like that.
I guess so. It's like the 80 gazillionth episode.
Yeah, something like that.
I've
What
lost
does this
count.
sound like? Listen to this. What does that sound like? Can you hear
Sounds
that?
like an anvil hitting metal.
Hear, hear. Okay, calling to order. See what I did there?
Court to order.
Court to order.
Come and get it before I slop it to the hogs.
No, KCA, Randy, this is not the weather report. This is Rational Empiricist Rants. And we're going to do the weather report unless my attention span is not very good. So it's possible that I will be out in the public park chainsawing public trees. Oh, I shouldn't say that live, should I? Damn it. Oh, well, let me call my attorney. I'll be right back. So, what do we got here? Let's see if I got, I'm going to kind of reorder this.
I guess, should we first introduce what we're going over?
Yes, we should. You want to go ahead and handle that? Oh, okay. Sure. You texted me the other night. You were watching the same video I was, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Which was funny.
I know, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Are you watching this? Yeah, I'm watching this. Are you watching this? I'm watching this.
Yeah. We should stop watching this because both of us were really just like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy.
And even earlier today was straight from God.
And then I've been in the community post on this too. So I've been talking to somebody called Geologist Grandpa, and I'm pretty sure that's Dr. Crackers, isn't it? It sounds like it because he started telling me his story about his first debate in 1968. I was 17 years old, you know. But he was in high school, so he's probably about the same age I am. I think he's a little bit older, but not too much. But anyway. And then Redefined Living is trying to give me his precept stuff.
Yeah.
How do you know God doesn't exist? And so I told him. And then he didn't like it. And then what else was going on?
Did you say, how do you know? Or did you say, how is it that God doesn't exist?
He said something like that.
They usually don't care about knowing questions.
Yeah, they don't care about knowing. So what did he say? Redefined Living. So we had Jon Snow.
So while Speed is finding that out, for the audience, today we're going to be ranting about this SFT's latest video on the ultimate destruction of common ancestry in favor of separate ancestry again. And we're going to be going over that video. I don't really feel like watching through it like just blindly and going through each point. I feel like more like summarizing it because like some of his points kind of get repeated a lot. And they kind of factor into one another.
But I kind of want to listen to a couple parts where he starts talking about bottlenecks because he says bottleneck like 15 times in a row. And by the time he got done threading my mind through that needle, it was just a big tangle of yarn, and I couldn't figure out what in the hell his point was.
I know it was very it required a few rewatches to actually see the point he was trying to make.
Right.
Which I mean, like the when you mention the whole bottleneck thing, it awfully seemed like he was a priori assuming his conclusion. You know what I mean? Like that was literally the Noahic flood bottleneck.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, he would just be saying it was many bottlenecks in the past, but obviously he doesn't think that. So I can't find any good or any other alternative other than the fact that he's assuming that that is the bottleneck that he's talking about here, which that's kind of assuming Bible-based conclusions to begin with.
He kept going back between the Thaler study on the COX-1 gene.
Right.
So he kept going between that where they said everything coalesced at 200,000 years for this one gene.
Isn't it called the CO1 gene?
You can call it CO1, COI, COX. I like calling it COX-1, COX-1, because it's a little more specific than alias
it's cytochrome C1.
Yeah, because the alias for it is COI and CO1. So it's cytochrome C oxidase subunit 1, I believe is the gene that we're talking about. And I'm pretty sure that's the one that Thaler's talking about. So I like calling it COX-1 because that is a little better than the confusion between COI and CO1.
Sure.
They keep using all the time. So anyway, there's that. But what was I saying? Okay, he goes between that coalescence at 200,000 years of many animals that they looked at. Not all animals, but many of them for that one gene. And then he goes between that and the bottleneck, the out of Africa bottleneck. And then the Noahic bottleneck. And then he talks about other I don't know. He said that we introduce all kinds of bottlenecks. Well, yeah, bottlenecks are something that happen in complex populations over and over and over again in many different ways.
Right.
Because if you look at the tribal nature of human social, structure, or almost any mammals, they gather together in groups of about 30 to 60 or 30 to 100. But they have gene flow going back and forth between other groups because, there's some cross fertilization going on between the tribes, but they'll stay in one tribe. So you almost have a bottleneck right there for, that's happening over and over.
Even when you're founding like a new subpopulation, that's kind of a bottleneck too.
Yeah, that's definitely
a decreasing genetic diversity.
Yeah, when you go sub. Now, an interesting thing is that in some fish and some insects, they found that transposons can end up in the gene, and then it causes a mismatch so that they can't breed with each other. And I have to track that down a little more, but it creates a speciation event because they can no longer interbreed. And I just run into a little flag about that, but that would be interesting to take a look at. Because all of a sudden the genome on one side is a lot longer than the other side, and when they pair up, they apparently create an unviable organism. So I don't know, but that's interesting. Have to look into that. So
I think I'll start. Oh, you get there?
I am.
Oh, okay. So I think I'll start off with I made a list of some of his major points in this video, raw mat, I mean, and one big one initially was this quote by Ernst Mayr that according to, or the way he phrases it, according to evolution, this is raw mat's language, according to evolution, we expected there to be little to no homologous genes. So basically the mutations that occurred would have erased evolutionary history to the point where Mayr said looking for homologous genes is a futile effort. Now, when I looked into this, and this kind of struck me as odd because Mayr was so this was stated in around the 1960s. I don't know the exact date, but it was before genomic sequencing and even protein or molecular sequencing for that matter. So we didn't know much about the genome back then. Now, Meyer and his colleagues, or many of his colleagues, were in what's called the selectionist camp. So basically, this was the time before neutral theory and before genetic drift was really a thing or considered a important factor in evolution, I guess I could say. Now, because of this selectionist approach, this led Meyer to suggest that selection would erase this evolutionary history because it had the power to get rid of these mutations as organisms adapted to new environments. And that would lead to a lot of convergence because, well, we obviously do see a lot of convergence today, but he thought, or he speculated, that natural selection would lead to even more homoplasy than we can see, and that would lead to a erasure of genetic history. So that's kind of what he was referring to there, that selection was powerful enough to cause these adaptations, and so little to no homology should exist in the genome.
Yeah.
Now, the point I'm trying to make here is that speculative prediction, which we now know is wrong, was coming from a specific, I guess you could say, type or hypothesis of how evolution works. Right. Namely, like I said, the selection theory or selection only theory.
When was the quote from?
Well, the website I looked at, it said 1960, but I'm not entirely sure.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah, so the point I'm trying to make is that was not a prediction per se, or a prediction of evolution per se. Rather, it was a idea by Meyer and his colleagues based on their hypothesis, their kind of sub theory of evolution, I could say, that evolution worked by selection alone. And now, of course, we know that is wrong, but that does not mean that because that prediction is wrong, that evolution was wrong in making that prediction. It was simply a type of evolution that made that prediction that was shown to be incorrect, if that makes sense. I'm really phrasing this poorly, but I hope my point is coming across okay.
And it was really a mistake, but I'd like to find out where the quote came from. Did he read the quote, or did he do any more than just pay?
He showed the quote. Well, he showed part of the quote.
He did. Do you know about where that was?
It kind of appeared in a few places. It was let's see. I'll just go through it.
This one? Animals of the same age.
No, I know the page it's from.
Oh, okay. Can you link it in private chat, and I'll go dig it.
Oh, I don't know what the time is, but I know what the page looks like.
Yeah. Is he talking about like?
Go back. There we go. That one.
Oh, this one. Okay. Reject. Okay, 1963. Quite feudal, except in very close relatives.
Okay, 1963.
He doesn't give me a whole lot to search for there, does he?
No.
Nope. But let's see. Quite feudal. I'd like to find the whole context of what the person is saying before.
Yeah, maybe you can find something that I couldn't.
In very.
Hey, Nestle. Welcome everyone in the chat.
Was he talking about like saturation? You know, that there would be such saturation of genetic or mutations that.
No, I don't think so. He was talking about. He was saying that selection was powerful enough to cause rapid adaptations, and that could drastically change the genome. So the homology would be changed quite quickly.
Okay. So I'm not getting. Let's see. So which, this
of course,
guy
is true for some genes, but not for others that we now know of, like.
Yeah, and before we get into this, so Raw Matt was talking about one gene in the mitochondria, which is this COX-1 gene, right? That was it. And apparently his whole thesis was based on this one gene, and he got most of that wrong. And we'd have to look at the point he was trying to make, but he was just talking about one gene, and you can't. And for one thing, mitochondria and the Y chromosome, particularly mitochondria, are very, very different in how they end up evolving. So you can't come up with a timeline for evolution and claim it for the entire species based on a mitochondrial DNA.
Right. Whilst ignoring the rest of the non-mitochondrial genome. Yeah, exactly.
Right, the whole story. Yeah, because you've got, like, in any one of your cells right now, you have a population of mitochondria. You could have thousands of them if it's your heart muscles. I think there's like tens of thousands of them in your heart muscles. And in there, you could have a population that has basically different alleles for probably 50 to 100 different mutations that have happened right in that one cell before that cell dies. And then we're talking about germline mutations and how they end up, traveling onward. But in the egg cell, or basically the mother's germ cell or gamete, okay, there are going to be multiple mutations, differences, even among the mitochondria in that one cell, because you're not just going to get one mitochondria that ends up becoming a part of the zygote, right? You're going to get a whole population of them. So, I mean, you can't look at this and make the projections that they make.
No.
The math works differently, very differently. So,
well, yeah, you also have to consider the fact that mitochondrial genome is a smaller effective population size, whereas the nuclear genome is larger effective population size. So therefore, it goes further back into. And I think Dr. Dan made this point in one of his relatively recent videos, probably like a year ago. Actually, on the failure paper, I believe, that the nuclear genome, the presence of the nuclear genome means that you can't just take this mitochondrial gene and extrapolate that for the rest of the genome, because they're, like you said, they work differently in terms of a population size, in terms of how they evolve and change. So, but of course they don't want to admit that, because they already know that if they included the nuclear genome, their math would get messed up, basically.
Yeah, and you definitely don't want to take pedigree studies, which would be, mama, daughter.
Oh, we'll get to that. Don't worry.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry, I got a general plan how we're going to go over this.
Let's deal with this Ernst Mayr thing first.
Yeah, sure.
I linked this in the description. Ernst Mayr once wrote that the search for homologous genes is quite futile, except in very close relatives. But evolutionary developmental biology, aka Evo-Devo, has turned this common knowledge on its face. And then apparently Ernst Mayr was talking about, he thought that every animal would have a very different developmental set of genes.
Correct.
So that we weren't likely to find it, but we found out with Evo-Devo that all complex animals, flies and flycatchers, dinosaurs and trilobites, flatworms and humans share a common genetic toolkit that govern the formation and patterning of their bodies and body parts. Hox genes, for instance. So anyway, Mayr was just wrong. And it's like, why is he making a point to quote somebody from, where's this from? What the hell is he doing?
Well, because his point is that evolutionists made this prediction before we had genetic sequencing, and therefore, since the prediction turned out to be wrong.
Okay. So he was wrong, right? Okay, so he was wrong. One biologist made a prediction in 1963, and he was wrong. And the creationists predicted Did they really make predictions back in 1973? Maybe 75. On the basis of a common purposive designer. Okay.
Well, if you go I don't know exactly where it is, but if you go ahead a bit, they show a quote by this guy, I believe, from ICR, or at least the person, the creationist he's quoting here, that he says the same features are for the same function, and different features are for the different function. So he explicitly gives this prediction that feature or form is dependent on function. And so, or I guess what are your initial thoughts on that? Because I have a bit to say on that.
I'd like to hear him say it. Can we find if I roll from here, will we find it shortly?
I'm not sure. I guess let's do what we did before.
What's that?
Or just move ahead at along.
Oh, but it goes 5 seconds at a time.
Maybe it was before this. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we're getting pretty far into it. Oh, I love his battery analogy where he mixes his metaphor up. Okay, we're going. Let's see, we're going before. No, we're not getting it. We're getting the battery. Was it here? Nope. Oh, was it there? Oh, he's talking about Thaler. Okay, this is Thaler. I don't know. We'd have to play it and see. But if you could remember does he read anything, or is there anything I can search on?
Hold on, let me find it.
So his dialogue. Okay. I think I'm gonna roll a little bit of this. Let me see. I want to get the very beginning of creation. You have mitochondria that doesn't have any mutations in them. Then all of a sudden, it's what?
All animals emerged about the same time as humans. What the ever loving hell?
We got to play part of this, Andrew. Are you going to search while I can play a little bit of this?
Yeah, just play it.
Okay.
We'll see how much our brains explode.
Mutations. And now we can trace these mutations that we have today back to a point where there were no mutations. Unfortunately, we can't go all the way back to creation because there.
Okay. How do we trace it back to where there's no mutations? What the fuck is he talking about?
Yeah, he's just wrong. I think he's stealing from SFT and of course Jensen about being able to, track everything back to 6,000 years ago or something.
Yeah, that's a big point in this video.
Yeah, they claim to have constructed the mitochondrial Eve genome, right? Where did they publish that? Have you ever seen that published?
Well, I mean, we know mitochondrial Eve existed, but it wasn't 6,000 years ago.
No, but the creationists claim that they went back and they reconstructed the actual Eve's actual mitochondrial genome. That they actually have reconstructed it. SFT has said that over and over again, and I'm wondering where have they published that?
I don't know.
That sequence, because I'd like to see that fucking sequence.
In between SFT's little earlobes.
I guess so. Maybe that's where it's published. Okay.
There was a global flood bottleneck. So the best we can.
Is that a poop emoji?
No, that's a. Oh, what the hell is the name of the pyramids in
Tower of Babel.
Ziggurat.
It's a poop emoji.
Can do is trace mutations back to Noah's flood. Now, to know what is related, all we have to do is look for and ask, was there any convergence during that time following this mutation rate back to the bottleneck? Like there is with cats and dogs. But
do you know what he's talking about here?
He's talking about the genes coalescing in the past.
Okay.
So the gene lineage is eventually kind of like how a species lineage eventually converges to a common ancestor, so do gene lineages
Okay.
eventually and you can figure that out using the molecular clock.
So
Now-
have we found mitochondrial puppy doggy or puppy daddy and puppy mama?
I don't know if they've specifically used mitochondrial DNA for that.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway.
In this case, when it comes to humans and primates, the answer to that is no. Therefore, humans cannot be connected to primates at any time in known history, because there is no genetic connection via convergence or overlap to prove this supposed relationship.
Okay, so how does that follow? So what he's saying is because we found that convergence at 200,000 years, that we can't possibly be related to chimpanzees. That's what he's saying, right?
Well, he's saying that each species, the gene lineage in each species eventually converges for that species at 200,000 years.
Yeah, so we can't go before that, he's claiming, and find connections between two different branches because we can't go before 200,000 years.
Right. Yeah. So he's claiming this shows separate kinds because they all each kind the gene for each kind converges at 200,000 years according to this study, and of course he doesn't want to go further back than that, and it's kind of remarkable that he doesn't understand, or because later in the video he talks about, oh, there was this bottleneck and evolutionists to escape from this conundrum, they invented they said that there was a convergence point before the bottleneck, and it's obvious that he watched Dr. Dan's response to the claims made in the Fowler study.
Okay.
But because it seems like he at that point he's responding to what Dr. Dan said, that the most recent common ancestor of a gene or a gene lineage is not the same thing as the origin of that group that the gene is part of. So we can get more into that later, but
Okay.
This study has shown us that independent lines of ancestry exist. Let me try to explain it to you in a different way. Since mitochondria acts as a type of battery.
Okay, this is beautiful. Okay, we got to listen to the battery thing, okay?
okay.
I'm so excited about his metaphor. Okay, hang on a second. I got to find it.
Yeah, we can listen to this part, but I really don't want to listen to the whole thing again.
Okay. Here, this is exciting.
I figured that an analogy using batteries will work well enough. Now.
Okay, but let's see. So he's saying that mitochondria is like a battery, like it provides energy for the organism. So he's going to claim that we have AAA batteries and C batteries and D batteries for different organisms, right? Is that what he's doing?
Well, what he's saying is he's saying that over time the battery, just as the battery loses power, he's kind of making the metaphor of that to the fact that we're accumulating more and more mutations over time.
Yeah, but he's also using the battery as a metaphor for the energy provider for the cell. So he's crossing his metaphors, which I thought could only happen in his mind, where he would fuck up a metaphor that badly to where, okay, if it's providing energy for the cell and it's losing power, you see what I mean? So he's
it's a horrible rhetorical analogy.
Crossing metaphors. And
yeah. Yeah, whenever
Well, he-
my mom's an English teacher, and whenever I would mix a metaphor, she'd just slap me upside the head.
Well,
So
he's
it
he's
triggers
talking about the battery as the actual genome, not the mitochondria.
Yeah, but why is he using battery then? It's so he's saying, okay, as it loses power, basically the battery's going to lose power over time, right? He's claiming that is mutational genetic entropy is what he's saying, right?
Well, he's saying that as the battery, so the full battery would basically be the most recent common ancestor of that gene, basically.
Yeah.
And as it progresses, well, let's just watch and see how he explains it.
Okay.
That an analogy using batteries will work well enough. Now, different life forms would have different types of batteries depending on where they live and how they need to function. The more similar the organism, the more similar type of battery they would need. Why would an aquatic fish have a more similar battery to a dog or a cat than it would to other aquatic organisms? Well, it wouldn't, and it shouldn't. And guess what? It doesn't. Now let's zoom in. Take a human and a primate. Both were created independently, but they have very similar batteries, since each were created to live in a very similar environment, eat the same type of things, and both have a similar physical body plan and layout. That should be expected if young Earth creation were true.
Okay, wait a minute. So Adam and Eve swung through trees and ate fruits from, the top of trees. Is that what Adam and Eve did, according to him?
He's basically, because I brought this up to him in the side chat yesterday. I said, okay, you're claiming that the genome, these similarities and differences correlate with the functional necessities of the environment the organism lives in. And I said, okay, so why then do bony fish have more in common with tetrapods than they do with other fish, namely like cartilaginous fish, like sharks, sharks and rays and things of that nature. And what he said pretty much was, well, bony fish and tetrapods both have bones, so, and yeah, but that doesn't, that's, you see what I mean? Like it's basically hand waving, because he started out by saying that's based on that form follows from functional environment, what you need to have in order to function in that environment. But when you show not or counter examples of that, now he goes back to, well, we would expect certain forms to be more similar to each other for reasons.
Yeah. Your comment was,
and that wouldn't even explain like why within bony fish we're more similar to, we're more similar to coelacanths and lungfish than coelacanths and lungfish are to other bony fish. So,
well, okay, it's even worse than that, because when you're talking about mitochondrial DNA or mitochondrion, right? They have exactly the same function in all eukaryotes. There's very little difference in this particular gene, like cytochrome C oxidase or COX-1. There's very little difference in what it does across all eukaryotes. So there would, just because chimpanzees and humans swung through trees and ate fruits, I guess Adam and Eve swung through trees, just because they did that, and fish eat in the water, does not mean that their mitochondria is going to operate differently. It doesn't.
Right. Yeah. It fails because they're saying that all these different parts of the anatomy and parts of the genome would have to be correlated with each other in such a way that it mimics evolution, but it's actually based on environment, which doesn't work.
He's saying that everything down to the very, very details of the cell membranes and the nucleus and everything would have to somehow map to the phenotype.
Yeah, everything is based on function and the designed environment, is what he's saying. It's all based on functional design.
Yeah, so God had to tweak the mitochondria so that chimpanzees could swim through trees and fish could swim through water. it just doesn't make any sense that his mind is so screwed up. I just can't believe this guy. And then look at the kudos he gets when he does these videos. These people are just lapping this stuff up, and he's talking complete nonsense, even at a third grade level. It just blows me away.
I mean, to make this point specifically, to drive it really home here for the audience, the genome of different creatures does not correlate with functional necessities of the environment. We know this. It's based on evolutionary history. We can show like you have different structures. You have different structures for the same function. So say you both have you have limb bones in the flippers of whales, but you don't have those same limb bones in the fins of sharks. They both live in the same environment, but they use completely different structures. Or at least the underlying structures are very, very different. Why is that? You also have same underlying structures for different functions. Like you have the same limb bones for digging as you do for walking in different kinds of mammals, or for flying, or for it. It just doesn't make any sense. Like it only works for when you're looking at the overall morphology, the prototypical example of the creature you're looking at. But even within the kinds that they mention, there can be extreme variation in what they do, what environment they live in. So it doesn't work. It's nonsense.
Looks like we have a Gutsip Gibbon problem coming up at 2:00. Damn it.
Yeah, that came right out of the blue.
Okay, I'm going to try to roll through the battery part, and then I'll let you take over again, okay, Andrew?
Okay, sure.
So don't irritate you too much.
And this was predicted beforehand. This was not predicted by ties us to primates, and how even other primates, but not by much. The real difference comes down to different generational times. So it's like evolution presumes, but rather because humans have a higher generation time. Science has now confirmed that both humans and chimps both came out of...
I guess
that was pretty much his battery thing.
Okay, that was a battery thing. So anyway, everything was created with the perfect mitochondrial genome, according to kinds, specifically designed. So he specifically designed the mitochondria so that the animal could swing through trees or swim in the water, because of course they need a different kind of ATP if they do that, right? Slightly different. And then because of genetic entropy, the battery slowly wore down. And that's what we're seeing in mutations, if I got that correct. But anyway, I'll let you go ahead according to your notes.
Okay. So let's see. For the first page of notes, last thing is he at one point mentions paternity tests, like because Erica got to give them up paternity tests, and he says they don't and can't show relatedness between animals. And what I really like about that is because he's basically it shows that he doesn't even understand the point being made with that, because Erica's point with the paternity tests is that you need to show a limit to how far back these kinds of statistical methods of showing relatedness can go. Because you need to show that if these different kinds don't share a common ancestor at some point, which is exactly what paternity tests do. They show common ancestors in terms of individuals rather than species. But what he's... It just shows that he doesn't understand how the logic is the exact same, and he's basically hand-waving it away with a completely different, non-related point.
Yeah, let's listen to that part. I think it's right here.
So mutation rates help us explain this entire scenario and the pattern that we see. So the question of, can evolution or creation better explain the diversity of life we see today? Well, that question is no longer on the table, as young Earth creation answers it way better. And since
I want to make sure that, let's see, 653. And 741. So actually it was before that. Damn it. It was at 6:46, so he's going back to his battery again.
would be in a primate. Why? Because these areas that are without mutation all have beneficial functions, just like today. Mutations change the original function, and unfortunately, the vast majority are for the worse. So the similarities and the differences that we see should be expected because the same programmer designed all life. What is causing these new changes? To see what is related and if we converge with any other species, or is there evidence for independent ancestry with clearly created design diversity built in, where mutations that arise cause problems? That is the real question of ancestry, and a paternity test has not, nor ever will, show us that we are related to a primate of any kind, because we are not, and it can't. So mutation rates.
So
You see what I mean? So
Yeah.
he's missing the entire point.
he thinks a paternity test should be able to tell you whether or not a chimpanzee in the zoo was your father. I mean, that's kind of what he's saying, right?
Yeah,
You-
it's what he's implying, or at least like I mean, we might be mistaking what he's saying, but like that is kind of what he's implying here, and that shows that he doesn't understand Erica or anyone else when they make this point that you need to show the logic, or when this logic fails, when these types of tests fail.
He doesn't
So
understand
it is-
paternity
yeah.
tests. I mean, obviously, he doesn't understand paternity tests if he thinks you can show relatedness between species with a goddamn paternity test.
Right.
Because
He doesn't understand the point, the argument.
okay, anyway,
But don't worry, it gets it. I got some way better points here. So the next one is a doozy. So when I heard him make this point, I had to rewatch the same clip a few times just to make sure that what I heard was actually what he was saying, because it was so ridiculously misconstrued and just a blatant misconception of how molecular clocks and phylogenetics work that I was aghast at that he had put this in a video. Okay. So he showed so his point was earlier that he thinks generation time can explain genetic diversity. So different generation times can explain different generation different generation times and different species can explain the genetic diversity in those species. Now, here's where he fails, and he makes this. He uses this argument later on. So this is a crucial point in his argument, or at least part of his argument. He says that according to evolution, we think that more mutations means that a species is older, based on the molecular clock. Now, he then shows a picture of phylogeny of an orangutan, a gorilla, a chimpanzee, and a human, Homo sapiens. And he says that according to evolution, because orangutans, sorry, Erica, I'm sorry. Orangutans, darn it.
don't say tang, or you're going to be
I'm sorry. Because O's have more differences compared to humans, have more mutational differences in their genome. According to evolution, they lived much longer ago. So they are older according to evolution, which is what? No, that's not how the molecular clock works. Like, for those who don't, for background for the audience, the molecular clock works by you're looking at two different species. You're looking at the genetic differences between them, the mutations basically, and using different models. It can get kind of complicated because of different factors, because the mutation rate isn't exactly constant in a species or even between species. But basically, you're looking at the number of mutations between these species, and you're going back in time to find the point where they diverged from a common ancestor, the age at which they separated, how long they've been separated from a most recent common ancestor. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
So his point that evolutionists say, oh, I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Is it just me?
I don't know.
I heard a little feedback. I'm not quite sure what it was. It's not great, but I'm hearing myself as well.
Yeah, I hear you too.
Goodbye, guys. I'll be back.
We'll wait for
Andrew, we got rid of speed.
Wait a minute. I don't want to leave yet.
You just don't feel like it.
Let me just get a reading first on this.
Is the one with the most mutations. But
okay. I'll leave now. I'll be back.
Okay. Hey, Scott, it's just you now.
It's just me. I feel the burden of leading the stream.
Yeah.
So you're learning a lot in your college?
Yeah, I think so. Oh, he's back.
So do you sit in the front of the classroom or the back of the classroom or somewhere?
It's still online, unfortunately.
Oh, it's all online. So you can't suck up to the teacher as much.
Yeah. So should I continue with what I was saying, Speed?
Well, now he has to figure out the sound.
Oh, okay.
Because sometimes we can hear maybe a video, but not his sound. And he has to fiddle around until you can do both.
Okay.
Hear him and his videos.
Oh, I didn't know it was muted. I want to play that part that you were talking about. Because
okay, sure. Yeah.
It was stunning. And I think it's at, let's see here.
So you noticed that too?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Well, here, while you're doing that, I'm going to pull up an image so I can explain it a bit easier.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and play it.
This fails because, as I stated earlier, the only explanation that there is now is that all individual primates and humans are the same age. Therefore, different generation times.
Okay, we got to go back 1 second.
The tree of life chart connecting ancestry was made is that they have to assume genetic similarities evolved over time to be similar and then diverge. Thus, the oldest species in the family with the most genetic similarity, according to them, is the one with the most mutations. But this fails.
What the fuck? Okay, that was it, right?
Yeah. He. Or what time are you at?
16:16.
Yeah, so, it keeps going a bit. Let's play it a bit for a bit.
Okay.
Because, as I stated earlier, the only explanation that there is now is that all individual primates and humans are the same age. Therefore, different generation times are what caused more mutations to build up, making it appear as though one primate family diverged from the other because one is older than the other. But this is easily solved by simply looking at generation times. Now, look at the door in the...
Okay. So he's saying that we're saying that chimpanzees are older than us?
Right. He's saying that these lineages to the left, what are called the outgroup in phylogenetic terminology, that because they have more mutations, they are older according to the evolutionary molecular clock.
Right.
Which is
chimpanzee, in that if you go to the zoo and you see a chimpanzee, that chimpanzee is not, his species isn't older than us. We're the same age.
But yes, because we diverged at the same point. We're both evolutionarily the same age.
Yeah.
Like, this is a basic misconception of phylogenetics and how the molecular clock works. I don't know if it's because of Ramat's ignorance, or because he's deliberetely ignoring it, but I see no other option. Because
I think what's going on in his mind is he's mixing models, right? He's complaining about what evolution thinks, but then he's thinking that when God created chimpanzees and humans, they were perfect genetically, and then they started to acquire mutations. So we can go back and we could say, he would say that, oh, chimpanzees have 130 mutations, okay, since they were perfect. So he's conflating that idea of the perfect genome, right?
Right.
So he keeps bringing that in, and that's what he meant by batteries running down. Like you have a brand new charged battery. That means that God just created that perfect genome, and
Right.
then the battery starts to mutate, so it starts losing charge over time. And he's stuck on that, and that's the way he's thinking. So everything he says, you have to kind of run it through his convoluted mind in order to figure out what the hell he's really the point he's trying to make.
Yeah. He also at some point says that the molecular clock is based on constant mutation rates, which it isn't. It's more complex than that.
Yeah, they have to assume genetic similarities evolved over time to be similar, and then diverge.
You want to play a little bit more of it? He goes more on this point, so let's
Okay.
drive it home.
Okay.
The background. That door represents the bottleneck. Everything that walked through it survived. This means they were all the same age. So why do we see charts like this one with the pangolin, then the gorilla, then the chimpanzee, and then eventually human, showing the evolutionary pattern of life? Well, as I said, this was made based on assumptions that more mutation means it's older. That's all. So why is a panda bear evolutionarily older than a brown bear according to evolution? Mutations. They have more of them. Since they believe that all bears mutate at the same rate, then more mutations mean an older bear. The truth? Panda bears have the lowest generation time of all bears, almost 3 times lower than the average. So obviously, they have more than twice as many.
Okay, so this is where you right at the point I was when you texted me.
Yeah.
Like he's saying, he's conflating the phylogenetic chart with the age of the species.
Yes.
And it's just like it numbed my mind. I mean, my mind just started to do. It's
Right.
like, wait a minute.
I'm
I'm trying to understand him, right? And it's like, what is he thinking?
like if he okay, here I'm gonna look up a site, and if Raw Matt is watching, he will go to the site, and he's going to look over the following web page and correct his error, because this is a basic misconception about phylogenetics.
Okay.
And if he had just taken the time to actually learn about this and be honest about it, he wouldn't have messed up this badly.
Are you going to show the screen?
Yeah, hold on. Okay. Share screen. Yeah, see, even Brainbug. I know. It's ridiculous. Anyone who has a basic understanding of this knows that he's wrong. Okay, here we go. Misconceptions about evolution. Go down to that part about evolutionary trees. Misconception. Taxa that are near the bottom or left-hand side of a phylogeny evolved earlier than the other taxa on the tree.
Yeah.
That is a misconception. It is wrong. They're all the same age, left to right. It depends on the divergence, the age of the divergence point, which is what the molecular clock measures.
It just shows the time to divergence. It doesn't show the.
It doesn't show the age of the species. I know. It's
right.
Okay. I'm going to put the link to that in the private chat so you can put it in your description. There we go.
Oh, thank you. Oh my God, that one just blew me away.
I know. My jaw dropped at that.
So he mixed his metaphors and then he just collided his models.
Yeah, yes. He mixed his models at the same time. And like, this is how he really thinks. And he's doing these videos. This whole video is based on that kind of thinking. And everybody in the audience is going, ooh, give me more.
Okay, everyone go check out Brainbug.
Yeah, Brainbug says, I will be addressing Raw Matt tomorrow on the show, along with his hero, Juby.
Ooh,
you should invite me. Anyway. Okay. So
Oh man, I'm gonna miss that. I'm gonna be somewhere else tomorrow. Oh well.
are you gonna be on another planet?
No, I'm gonna. It's complicated.
Oh, you're not gonna be on another planet. I'm just worried about that.
Yeah, we don't want you to leave the planet, Andrew.
Yeah.
We need you too much here.
So real quick before we move on, should we have like a poll in the side chat, like just to make sure we drove this point home and that the audience understands why he's wrong? Can we just do that real quick?
Yes, because everybody tell us what you heard and whether you understand how atrocious this line of thinking is.
Yeah. What did you learn today about raw math?
Because he uses this same argument for his point about Neanderthals, which we'll get to later. Don't worry.
Pop quiz. Pop quiz time. Everybody tell us. Nobody's telling. Oh God, these guys are slow. Should we fail them for being slow?
Well, there is a lag time before they.
Oh, that's right. They haven't even heard it yet in the real world.
And then they have to react to it and then to type. So
well, at least we have it published on YouTube. So
wait a minute. Does that mean that there's more mutations between the time we say it and the time they hear it?
Could very well be. Could very well be.
Depends on the generation time. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. So next point I wrote, we kind of already covered. So okay. So we got to my final page of notes for raw math's major points.
I know you're right because I heard you shake them in your hands.
Yeah. Let's see.
That's an old Rush Limbaugh trick.
Yeah. Are we going to overstream Erica?
We might. Sorry, Erica.
Yeah, but yeah, sorry us, because Erica gets all the views.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, sorry us. But people can watch this later. So
yeah, Carol, you never know when there's going to be a test.
Yeah, I know.
So you need to have your pencils and papers waiting and in the ready position at any point.
Yeah, we haven't even started on dinosaur soft tissue yet.
Yeah, that's going to be another thing. Okay, so now we get to a point that Dr. Dan is trying to be, or has that he's tried to drive home, and they've obviously heard it, but they don't address it. They say they've addressed it, but they don't actually address it. So he's talking about the mutation rates and how there's low genetic diversity in human populations today, but there's a really high, a fast mutation rate in these genomes. So according to Matthew, they should, or this corroborates the supposed young Earth timeline.
Yep.
Because the mutation rate, if it's really fast, there's only a little bit of genetic diversity there, then it must be young, according to their logic. But what he's ignoring is the fact that the mutation rate is not the same thing. It's a generation per generation mutation rate. It's not the same thing as a substitution rate, which is how many mutations are fixed over time based on selection, which of course selection is going to weed out some mutations. It's going to eliminate some from the population. And so genetic diversity is going to get lower over long time scales. Yes. Until it reaches an equilibrium, I believe. So, and this is the major thing that he's pointed, or Dr. Dan's pointed out, that is wrong with Jeanson's work, which is basically what RAMAT and SFT are parroting off of here. So
yeah, when they do pedigrees, okay, when they measure between a mother, a daughter, and a grandma, they're going to end up with mutation rates, which have nothing to do with substitution rates, which are what you're going to see over a species or a population over time.
Right.
Over some great time. And then, oh my goodness, what happened here? Oh, I'm supposed to put the ribs in.
Put those ribs in. They're not called They're called prime ribs for a reason.
Right. And the other thing, like they frequently will say, okay, there's 100 mutations per human being per generation. And I've heard not only SFT and Rants say it, but I heard some of their PhD supposed biologists say that means there are 700 billion mutations being introduced per generation in the human genome.
Right.
They believe that 700 billion mutations, and we have a 3.2 billion nucleotide genome. How in the fuck would that work? I mean, like they actually think that they can do that multiplication and come up with a number that means something. I mean, that tells you right there that the substitution rate is not equal to the mutation rate. You know?
Right.
Because everything would go extinct in one generation. There wouldn't be a genome left. You know, it's just, what are they talking about? Anyway, okay, go ahead.
So I'm gonna restate this point one more time. So he says, he of course, one of the major things in this video is the most recent common ancestor of a gene, and he talks about that and how it converges in the distant past and how that's the origin point. But of course it isn't, because that would mean that the genetic diversity around that most recent common ancestor didn't exist. In other words, that selection didn't weed out anything. So again, he's ignoring selection and probably genetic drift here, and ignoring the fact that the origin of a group is more distant than the most recent common ancestor of the genes of that group. If you're looking at a particular gene lineage of a group, that is necessarily younger than the actual origin speciation point of that group that you're looking at. So, and that's another point that Dr. Dan has made that has just gone over their heads. So, okay, so he of course talks about how genetic convergence for other mammals does not exist and quote unquote never will, whatever. We can, yeah. Okay, so here's the part where he uses that point from earlier that he screwed up on, and uses that for his point about Neanderthals. So he says that because Neanderthals have more mutations, they would be older according to evolution. But he says they interbred with us and they exchanged genes, and we according to their model they would live at the same time. So that, according to him, supports young earth creation. But because this is founded upon his error from earlier, his misconception, and the fact that we know that Neanderthals coexisted with humans and they did interbreed, but they didn't. That Neanderthals aren't older than Homo sapiens. No one said that. That's this is just an application of his misconception about the molecular clock and phylogenetics, and it just fails miserably.
But then, should we listen to the part where he talked about that? I think it's right here.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly what the genetic evidence tells us, even in their very own evolutionary literature. But where does Neanderthal fit into all of this?
There we go.
You realize that they said Neanderthals and Denisovan are much older than us because they have more mutations, right? Well, let's go to the CO1 gene yet again.
Hang on a second. We got to slow this up because this is just so goddamn convoluted that I have trouble following it.
Looking at Neanderthals, we find 18 mutations their maximum, and Denisovan 20. But this is not really all.
What is he talking about there? That chart. What is he talking about? They find 18 mutations maximum.
I've probably like the CO1 gene.
So okay.
Mutations their maximum, and Denisovan 20. But this is not really all that high, considering they lived in small populations of around 20 people and were isolated and inbreeding people for around 800 years. This actually falls perfectly into what our model says and should expect to find in them. Why would we say that? Well, look at chimpanzees. They're the perfect example of this, since they never went extinct, and today they have around 65 to 75 mutations on average. So everything in our model lines up perfectly. They were mutating at the same rate. So it's easy. If you had tested a chimpanzee 800 years after the flood, they would have been mutating at almost the exact same rate as the people we call Neanderthal, which would have had around 15 to 20 mutations at that point.
Didn't he make the point earlier that chimpanzees had a much faster generation time?
Yeah, I think he did.
No, he's saying they had the same generation time as the
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's very convoluted.
Know that Denisovan, Neanderthal, and modern-day man all met one another and interacted. Therefore, that immediately rules out interacting with them before a bottleneck, because according to evolution, modern humans didn't even exist to interact with.
What the hell is he talking about? What was he talking about? Modern humans didn't exist to interact with. So, can you decipher that for me?
So he's pretty much saying that according to evolution, are we getting some feedback again?
Are we, Scott? Again? Yeah, it usually happens right after. Let's see if it'll autocorrect. Try.
Okay. So his point is that according to evolution, Neanderthals and Denisovans are older than Homo sapiens, so they couldn't have been around to interbreed with them, or they were in different continents, maybe.
Yeah. Which is,
so, of course, we know that's wrong.
Yeah. So Neanderthals came out of Africa earlier, right? So they branched out. They is that the current thinking? They came out like a long time before us, right?
Yeah. Not too long ago, but yeah.
Okay. But then we were all on the continent at the same time. So again, he's taking two timelines or two ideas and mixing them together and coming up with something that is very convoluted. And I'm sorry, I just can't follow his convoluted mind. I mean, when he goes around a curve that fast, I end up going over the edge. I don't know. What the hell is he saying? Okay. Where does Neanderthal fit in? Okay, wait, let's see. Looking at Neanderthals, we find 18. Okay, we'll go ahead. They're the perfect example of this, chimpanzees, since they never went extinct, and today they have around 65 to 75 mutations on average. How does he know that? There he goes again with this absolute idea of saying that a species has X number of mutations. You catch that? How ridiculous that is?
Yeah, I mean, if he's talking about a specific gene, maybe, but
he's talking about how different they are than us.
I guess so.
I don't know. And there's let's see, what did I find? I think for amino acids in the COX-1 gene, chimpanzees are 6 amino acids different than us, but they are about 120 base pairs different than us. So there was a whole lot of synonymous mutation going on. Okay. Pick the same amino acid, right? So we, but there were very few non-synonymous mutations. It amounted to a change of 6 amino acids in that COX-1 gene.
Yeah.
Between fish, I think it was like, I don't know, 20 amino acids. And they were all grouped together. So you can see that, as that thing loops through the membrane, you can kind of see where the amino acid substitution is not going to make a difference, but I'd have to analyze it further. But if you actually look at the genomes, you can see what's really going on here.
Yeah.
Instead of spouting bullshit about this stuff and not actually looking at the actual genome. Anyway.
Hey, Sean. Welcome.
Hey, Sean.
Okay, so last point I want to make, because I think we've gone over most of his major points here, because like I said, he kind of repeats them on and off in kind of different ways throughout the video, or different versions of the same talking point. Okay, so he claims that towards the end that evolution is, quote, anti-science, unfalsifiable, that it makes no testable no predictions on anything, and can't tell you how anything will evolve or what can evolve. Which, I mean, do we want to go over that, or?
Okay, I was distracted. Andrew, run that by me again. Sorry.
Okay, so he said evolution is anti-science, unfalsifiable,
Oh,
makes no predictions, and can't tell you what or how anything will evolve.
oh my God. Says
Which,
Ronat.
yeah,
That's
I
all
mean, it's his concluding statement, but it's just so
Yeah.
wrong. Do we even need to go over it?
Probably not. No.
Yeah, it's just the same bullshit lines that.
I mean, like this is my point. This whole video is pretty much the same talking points, either parroting Nathaniel Jeanson's work or just the work of other creationists, and it's nothing new. They've not addressed anything.
Yeah.
They think they have, but they're just they're addressing the same argument with the same argument they've used before, that they were like it just doesn't make any sense.
They're willfully and woefully ignorant, and they want you to be too.
That's a good way to say it.
So this is a comparison between zebrafish and humans for the COX-1 gene, basically. And I think I'm echoing now.
Uh-oh.
Am I echoing for you guys?
You are not.
Are you guys echoing? Okay, we're okay.
I don't think I'm echoing. I don't think I'm echoing.
So this is zebrafish and humans compared. And where you see the stars, that means that the nucleotides are exactly the same. And where you see the spaces, can you see my cursor? Yeah, you can. Okay. Where you see the spaces, that means there's a difference, okay? And that's for the nucleotides. And then this one is chimpanzees and humans. And you can see that we're a lot closer, which is how we determine that we're closer, more closely related to chimpanzees than zebrafish. Kind of tells you right there. And then let's see, what do we have here? AGT. Okay, then we have, I did a comparison with, let me see here. This is Homo sapiens versus chimpanzees. And now this shows you the amino acid differences. And there are far less. You can see that the stars match up almost everywhere, except for a few spots. Okay. There's like one right here and one right here. So there ends up being 6 of them altogether, I think, or even less. So, I mean, we match up amino acid wise almost identical to chimpanzees.
Yep.
But then I think I've got zebrafish here too. So this is the one with humans and Danio or zebrafish. And you can see that there are more amino acid differences. In fact, 75 of them. But this is, I overlapped the gene a little bit. So there's probably more like 50 of them that are different. But you can see that there are a lot of amino acid differences, but you'll notice that they cluster together. And the reason they cluster together is because when you have like a transmembrane chain for a protein, it'll come out and it'll loop around. And oftentimes those loops do not matter. Okay. So that's why you're going to see mutations in these clusters. But now what this tells us, looking at between zebrafish and humans, to find that few changes in a protein and to find them clustered the way they are, what that tells us is that this particular protein does exactly the same thing in a zebrafish as it does in humans. It has nothing to do with whether we swim in the water, swing through trees, or pick olives in the desert. It doesn't matter what our environment is. Right. This particular protein is going to do the same thing. And that's why it is so highly conserved. But then somewhere he says that the COX-1 gene is the most rapidly mutating gene. I don't think that's the case at all.
It really isn't.
No. the most rapidly. And the other thing is they conflate the whole mitochondrial genome, and that D loop is something that mutates very rapidly. That huge section that
Not be able to get arms around that.
it doesn't code for proteins. So, are you talking to your dog, Scott?
No, I saw a little video of a mother with no arms picking up her or letting her daughter put her arms around her neck and lift her out of the baby bed. And I kept thinking, how sad for a mother not to be able to put her arms around her baby. Sorry.
Hang on a second. We may have found a theme song for.
Failure is your destiny. You disrespect yourself and your nation. You are made of stupid.
Did Nestle post that?
Yeah, that's a raw mat stupid theme.
That's a very good find, Nestle.
Yeah.
Can we play it
Why am
one
I
more
not finding
time?
stuff like that on the internet? Am I not interneting good enough or often enough or for enough time in my day?
Oh, hang on a second.
It takes practice, I guess.
I guess.
Your intellect is as weak as your dollar. Failure is your destiny. You disrespect yourself and your nation. You are made of stupid.
I'm
You
sorry.
are
I'm
made of
sorry, man.
stupid.
Your intellect.
I'm not sorry. Oh my god. I mean, this guy is just he.
Yeah.
What in the hell is he doing? I mean, what does he really think that he's making that? Does he really? He probably really believes this stuff, right?
Yeah.
I
I mean,
don't
the fact that he's standing for truth's right-hand man, basically. I mean,
Maybe
It
he just
makes you
closes his
wonder.
eyes and just spews stuff out of his mouth in a semi-focused but extremely wrong stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
yeah.
It blows me away. And then they keep doing it over and over and over again and putting out videos every day on something. And then they got their PhD guys like Grandpa Geologist here, who talks to me in chat. He was telling me I was being harsh when I said it's always the ultimate with you guys. I think that is a tell because everything is like the ultimate takedown.
It's all hyperbolized, yeah.
Yeah, hyperbole, yeah. Yep. And so I went back and forth with him on that a little bit. And then Redefined Living asked me here, where the hell was it? Oh my God. I lost it again.
How is it that there's no God?
Oh, because you named your channel as you did, perhaps you can answer a simple question. How is it that God is false? And I told him, I said, I can tell you that there's no such thing as a disembodied mind, period. Thinking and mind and all of that stuff is hashed out in neuroscience, and we know what it is, and we know how it happens, and it can't happen without a body. Just can't, no matter what you think. And I mean, most atheists like Danny still believe in the spirit mind. There's no such thing as a spirit mind. Your subjective experience and your consciousness are ideas that you have made up with your very physical brain. And you got to get over yourselves at some point. You got to get over it. Anyway.
I like what Sean says here. I can't believe that they tell their viewership evolution, deep time, etc. is about to go down. I know it's a great time to be a creationist. Evolution is in crisis.
And Cell Cordova too now. Now, okay, we could mention Dr. Dan with that ERV stuff with who was it?
Jackson.
Yeah, last night.
Mm-hmm.
He was clearly not understanding what Dr. Dan was saying, and then he came back, and he said that how the hell did he say it? He was like unconvinced. He'd have to research it more. He kept saying that.
Yeah. I mean, at least it was a very cordial, polite conversation. I kind of enjoyed it, but
yeah,
it was some iffy things in there.
Well, I thought it was Dr. Dan and his student, so I don't know. because he told him a whole lot of stuff that he really needs to look into. And then he kept coming back and trying to say, oh, it's not the case, without backing it up at all. It was just sort of it's what they do inside their minds. It's like if something doesn't make sense according to what they already believe, then they totally stop thinking and they go ahead and they restate their original point.
Or they make up something else to go along with it.
Right. But now the most epic thing I have ever seen is that John B. and Sal Cordova on carbon dating and why we find radioactive carbon in diamonds. Did anybody watch that whole thing?
Not yet.
Okay. So anyway, John B. made the point. He said diamonds is how we calibrate the machine to cut out the noise and the errors. So how in the hell would we expect to get a date for diamonds when diamonds is what they do is they grind up a bunch of diamond and that they know has no carbon-14 in it, and they put it into the machine and they come out with a radiocarbon date of 75,000 years. Well, then they subtract that 75,000 years because they know that that is their background. So you can't go ahead and put a diamond in this machine. And if you put a diamond in the machine and you subtracted the calibration with the diamond, you would end up with zero. Right. Basically that there was zero carbon-14, so you couldn't date it with carbon-14.
It's just noise.
Yeah, and he made that point so many times, and Cordova had nothing. Basically, he had nothing. Other than
how do they know that they have a diamond that has no carbon-14?
Because they don't. So they basically they have to calibrate. They have to correct for noise somehow, right?
So they don't know the diamond has no carbon-14?
How would they know? Basically, because they can't detect. They can't yet detect that tiny an amount.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So they're assuming that the amount of carbon-14 in a diamond is
very, very, very low.
Okay.
Yeah, negligible.
Makes sense.
So, but because there's no such thing as a perfect vacuum, when they pump the vacuum out of these machines, you're going to end up with some atmospheric nitrogen, and it's going to be N14. And so you're going to end up with false readings, basically. And they made that point over and over again. And Sal kept trying to get around it. And then finally Sal started saying, oh, yeah, but because of other measurements in biology, obviously the machine is wrong. They're wrong. And the way they come up with it, the way they calibrate these things is wrong, because he had he mentioned a research paper in 1960 that found a problem with racemization of amino acids, that they found the ratio was not what they expected. And because of that, he was going to take all of these, as John B. pointed out, they had many different ways to cross-check this data, right? Like hundreds of different ways to cross-check the data. Tree rings, ice, layers, all of that stuff. And Sal was going to throw all of that stuff out because he found one anomaly. And Sal just kept doubling down. But if anybody has not watched that video, that will be the video that everybody should refer to when somebody comes up with this bullshit about carbon-14 and diamonds.
Yeah, that's a reference video.
Yeah. And now they're going to do thorium, I think, next or something. That's the next one they're going to do. And John B. said that one, the quantities are much greater. So it's a much surer form of radiometric dating than carbon-14 is.
What got me, of course, he said the 75,000 thing you would subtract, but are the actual dates that he's claiming or that he was using to get, are they still below like 50 to 60,000 years, or because that's what we've been saying is you can't really trust a reading that's over or on something that's over 50,000 years.
Yeah, I think they're pushing that higher now because they have better instruments.
Better instruments.
Better error
I love it when instrumentation improves.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
They've claimed that they may be pushing it up to 150,000, but they can't go beyond that because there's too little and there's too much noise and there's too much impurity. I mean,
out there somewhere is the engineer that decided we need to work on this some more.
Yeah.
And they did it. That's pretty cool. They're probably, I guess there's only like 2 or 3 people who can, do that to the, machinery that we use to measure.
Yeah. What if we did it in space? Ooh, that would be cool.
Machinery in space. I would love to do that in space. I really hope that I forget how long they said the James Webb telescope will last up in space, but I sure hope they figure out a way to replace its fuel and stuff, before it dies out and becomes useless.
Yeah.
Because Russia isn't going to deliver fuel anymore, I think. Is that
I guess. But yeah, I just love it when technology improves like that.
Yep.
Makes me
Andrew,
feel hopeful.
You got anything else you want to finish up with?
All right. I guess I'll end it with what Sean said. The weakness of science, all knowledge is provisional.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yep.
As
Anyway,
the creationists would say.
Everybody should go watch Erica now. She's 25 minutes in, right?
Yeah, she's got a geophysicist on there.
Yep.
Talking about glaciation.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, you can go ahead.
So this was our quick takedown and review of ROMAT and SFT's video. Hope everyone in the side chat enjoyed it, learned something new. Whatever you got out of it, I hope it was interesting.
Yes. Okay.
Lots of good knowledge going around here.
Goodbye, cruel world.
Bye.